Welcome back to Yellow Card Vanguard, everyone. Zystral and Toku here, continuing our VGCS commentary. So again, a real quick reminder, I hosted a VGCS last month, and it was a trios cross-format event, and we're just getting around to uploading our commentary of the games recorded. So last round, round 2, we had Standard of Prison versus Magnolia, and here we've got Premium, and you can see it's Eradicators on the left versus going to be Grand Blue on the right. So what's your initial thoughts on this matchup while the players are shuffling?
Definitely it is in Eradicator's best interest to try and hit a lot of key pieces. The Eradicator deck, with the introduction of Vowing Sword, has a lot of ways of sniping from the deck, sniping from the field, but as well Stunburst, being able to snipe from the drop zone as well, is something that Grand Blue needs to be aware of. So what I'm very curious about is whether or not Grand Blue is playing one of those like really cool new Stoicheia cards in Sleeve Tugging Bell to be able to reset their bind zone all the way back into the drop zone, which not only anti-plays what Narukami aims to do, but also helps feel just the raw number of drop zone needed for those really big Skull Dragons.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to talk about is the fact that, well, I think having played this matchup myself, from the Eradicator side of view, one of the big cards you want to be looking for in this matchup is Eradicator Demolition Dragon, because it has an ability to on-hit bind from the drop zone, and that can really cause some disruption to Grand Blue's mid to early game setup if they hit it. But beyond that, I do agree it's mostly Eradicator favored, but Grand Blue does have outs, which is really important. So we see he's going to write the Nusku, finds another Nusku and then discards it. Meanwhile, Grand Blue's going to write a Tommy. And speaking about, going off what you're saying earlier about how Narukami is able to bind pieces from the deck or like specific key pieces, one of the key things to know is that as we've seen Grand Blue evolve, especially over the last few months between BRO and BSF and whatnot, the modern Grand Blue premium deck is starting to look a lot more techy, right? It's got a lot more one-offs, a lot more two-offs. It's not playing to consistency as much, and it's just playing more for like, I can find the silver bullet, so I'm going to play the silver bullet. I can find my column bard, so I'm just going to play 2 column bards despite it being a haymaker. So if there's some really huge hits for Stunburst here or an early Vowing, we could see that really causing a lot of disruption to Grand Blue.
Especially since with playing a lot of like these one-ups, not being able to fulfill the extra bind condition from Vowing Sword skill, we're going to see a lot of like power being spread across the board. Oh, we do see the 1-2 pass and we do see the punish with the getting ground on the drive check there.
I think that was a really aggressive quick shield there. I probably would have just not guarded if that was the plan. Just so you can save the quick shield to discard for things like Greed Shade or Negrobone later on. Interestingly enough, Narukami hasn't hit anything like a Demolition Dragon or a second Nusku. I mean, they discarded the first one, which is a bit weird, but I think in this situation, like, you want to try and build a board against Grand Blue as much as you can, because if there's one problem I think Eradicator has, is that it doesn't have very strong plussing or filtering. Like, sure, you have Nusku to set to top 5, but it's not straight plussing. And so if you can't build a board and pressure Grand Blue reliably, they're going to rebuild the board every turn and pressure you with huge numbers every turn. And your quote-unquote interactive G-guards and your disruption play only does so much to stop that. So at some point, you're going to have to put the foot forward and like fight back. And we see here that Narukami just hasn't been doing that here. I think he's debating about playing the Grade 2 game, which I like the idea of a lot. And there's the Demolition Dragon.
There's the Demolition Dragon. I was hoping to see that last turn as well to be able to actually hit the Skull Dragon out of the drop zone. Yeah, we do see the guard we do see some heavy guarding from Grand Blue's side of things.
But those are some really important pieces to guard with. Like, Negrobone is important to set up, and the Grenache and the drop zone for counter charge is important as well. The interesting thing here is that Narukami has chosen to give up they're choosing to fight for Grade 2, and Grand Blue is actually riding Elenia twice. So this is one of those D cards that you mentioned that people are playing Grand Blue. One of the big reasons is because it's a 10k body, which means that when you're playing the Grade 2 game, your opponent is going to struggle to swing 9k to 10k, and that favors you in terms of like guarding and having defensive power. So they're just double checking that's not hitting, which it isn't. And yeah, so Grand Blue's also saying, okay, I'm going to play this Grade 2 game as well. And I think that's correct. And I'd say the reason I don't like Narukami playing the Grade 2 game is because he's ridden Spark Raise, which is not the ideal Grade 2 ride. I think if you're going to fight for Grade 2 game as Narukami, you want Spark Rain, the on-play. There we go, he's just ridden this. The on-play top 5 and gains 5k. This is really going to help him fight for this first stride here. But at the same time, I don't think Narukami needs to fight for first stride. I think if you have a heal guard in hand and you have the interactive G guards, the disruption play from something like just even just a bulwark alone is huge enough that I think you just take it. Because if your opponent tries to stride into you and you just go stun burst, like that alone like disrupts everything that Granblue is doing.
And I think it's good to mention as well that Granblue's first stride isn't a super aggressive stride. It is still very setup based.
Yeah, it's Obadiah, and it's like at most they're comboing with like 1 or 2 extra Skull Dragon swings, but nothing, like it's definitely not a kill turn.
Yeah, it's not the bad bounty break right overnight Nightstorm that like we've grown to know and love so much. You are able to survive it if you have the heal guardians in hand to be able to, like you said, get that interactive G guarding going on. You are able to stifle their turn with that.
Yes, we see here the Granblue player is guarding really aggressively because he doesn't want the Demolition Dragon to bind key pieces. But at the same time, I'm kind of worried as Narukami because if you give Granblue too much damage on their first stride, even though we just said it's not a kill turn, there's a lot of things they can do with like multiple counterblast. They can chain Cannoneers, they can chain column bards, like they can get a lot of advantage from just one counterblast going first. So I know that you want to hit to get their bind pieces with the Demolition Dragon, but I think there's also a certain point where you need to say like, rather than stopping him from playing his game, you need to actually like take more steps to not lose.
We actually do see the Granblue player choosing to ride up into the Beatrice here, using her skill on place to call out the Skull Dragon. And believe it or not, it is a white, but that is W-I-G-H-T, as in a ghost, so that kind of Skull Dragon. And then we also see him milling out the Night Rose found from the Tommy Bros, and it's probably going to be a fairly vanilla turn here. You have just 1, 2, 3 big attacks coming from the side of Granblue.
Yeah, and the Tommy has the buff, so it's going to be 13. Actually, going to be 18 because of 5k for Beatrice. The thing about this Night Rose here is that Night Rose in the drop zone, you usually want that there to set up your big bad bounty combo, but if it gets bound, that's going to be hugely problematic. So he has another Night Rose there, he just drove check it, so you can always discard it for bad bounty, so there's safe there. But again,
not fighting the defensive is very unlucky as well, means that this Tommy Bro does hit, causing another hand commitment to guard this.
Yeah. It is only 10k though, so it's not the end of the world. The only thing I'm concerned about is Narukami isn't a deck that scales with Counterblast. Like, giving Narukami 1 Counterblast versus 5 Counterblast literally makes no difference. So the heal guard in there giving -2 crit to the Skull Dragon, I think understandable given he hasn't seen any defensives. So he now does have the first ride, and there is actually a rear guard on the board to bind with Sunburst, so it's not actually the end of the world for Narukami, but unless he finds some real gas here, I don't think there's a lot he can do. And the other problem as well is that by not taking the first ride initiative, or by not giving up the first ride initiative, you're striding into your opponent's grade 3 turn. That opens them up to making some G-Guard plays with the, I think it's called Negro Lily.
Negro Lily being able to call out the Skeleton Cannoneers, but luckily we haven't seen any Skeleton Cannoneers milled out of the deck yet, so we are on a fairly safe turn right now.
We see here, Granblue's actually choosing to give up one of its Skull Dragon. That's very interesting. I don't know if that's hubris or aggressive committal, or assuming that they're going to have more. They also bound the 1 Negrobone that was in their drop zone. I would have been surprised that the Tommy in the drop zone wasn't bound instead, but yeah, there's some pretty big targets here. But this is going over the way Vowing Sword works, so for every normal unit that gets bound, the Granblue player can choose to bind the same name from deck, and if they don't, it's plus 10k to a rear guard. So Eradicator here can just pump up their Esperadia and just swing for like, 28, 38k or more.
And then we still have the ever-looming threat of that Demolition Dragon in the back as well, which, if it does hit, we are able to bind that last copy of Tommy that we see in the drop zone, and Eradicator Vowing Sword will be able to go off again and potentially also give another set of buffs to the Esperadia.
So Granblue looks like it's willing to commit the second Skull Dragon, which implies to me that he definitely has a copy of the grade 1, the Bell, that returns all of your binds to drop somewhere in hand or in rotation. Because there's no reason to give up Skull Dragons that willy-nilly like that.
So maybe it was like that Silver Ball we were talking about, but being kept very close to the chest for that big blowout turn on that big bounty that we're looking for.
Yeah, so Grand Blue cannot bind the second Night Rose because we saw them drive check it, and they cannot bind the second Negrabone because it's the damage. So there's 2 lots of +5 and 2 lots of +10 that Eradicator to distribute here. And again, like we mentioned,
the majority of it on the Asperagia. Yep.
I think he's splitting them. Yeah, it looks like 15 on Vanguard, 15 on Esperadia.
You also see the Spark Rain come down as well.
Yeah, it doesn't do as much here. Like, the main reason for Spark Rain is A, board control, and B, multi-attack pressure, but he already has the Esperadia, so I don't think he needs that. The Kernshak coming down, I think Kernshak's a really interesting card. It, combined with this, the Unruly Dragon, it forms a really brutal defensive combo that can massively disrupt the opponent's board. I don't know if it's going to be that huge here because Grand Blue always has the option to get to Cannoneers to disrupt this play. But again, it forces Grand Blue to go into the Cannoneer instead of an extender like the Night Storm or the Beatrice. But for now,
you see a very nice early defensive trigger onto the Grand Blue side of things there.
Yeah. We'll see if he's going to try and stay on low damage here. Mill's a ship. Ship is a really good mill here. It lets him get some passing next turn. This guards the Esperadia. He does, of course, mill a second heal, which is not as ideal, but again, this is Grand Blue, they can Greed Shade, they can get back. It's not the end of the world. The Vanguard hitting, and again, with that Demolition Dragon pressure.
With the extra power buff as well from the Vowing Sword skill, making this attack just that much harder to guard as well. We see we do see the over trigger. Okay. Bing chilling. Oh my goodness. Okay, so not only does this give our Narcomi player an extra 2 cards in hand for that second set of drive checks, but that Demolition Dragon hits, which means that the EDD will now be able to activate its effect once more.
I think he's giving the 100 mil. It would make sense to give it to the Unruly Dragon, because that's the only one that doesn't hit. I don't know exactly where he's giving it. Either Unruly or the Esperadia, probably. I think he forgot to draw off of the Demolition.
I think that's what happened as well, yeah.
Because he drew off the Over Trigger, but not from the Demolition. Which, not getting that bind, I think is going to be it's going to be huge here. And not necessarily game losing, but it's definitely going to hurt. He does drive check this heal, which again is huge. It gives him that interactive G-Guard, which is massive amounts of power. And we'll see if he can capitalize off that. So Esperadia is huge. I think he's taking this, yep.
Alright, straight to 5.
Which I think means that he gave the 100 mil to the Esperadia, not to the Unruly Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is one concern here. So we've seen that the Grand Blue player has just 5th damage their Night Storm. Their Night Mist.
Yeah.
So he's not at risk of like losing to a bad bounty like 15 attack, Break Ride combo turn. But as we said, Grand Blue is a deck that scales with Counterblast. So those 4 Counterblasts, that's going to be like what? Night Storm, into Column Bard, into Skull Dragon, into another Night Storm or whatever, or what have you.
There's the bell.
Yep, so he's just going to mill it with the
Big Obadiah there. Yeah, so we see 2 Cutlass, we see the bell, we see this Cannoneer, and we see the Night Storm there. We're going to be able to call out pretty much a full field. Going to go for that Ghost Ship to get the card advantage back, but also that bell to just refill your drop zone again.
Yep, he's going to hollow the important pieces. The bell going back in is really annoying for the Eradicator player. He's putting 2 Skull Dragons back in there, which is quite terrifying. And of course, the bell gets power as well for every card returned.
That's going to be a huge boost.
So this ship coming in, Unruly Dragon's going to go off. He's going to choose probably the Night Storm. Yep. And then Kernshak, both players retire one of their rear guards. He's going to let Kernshak go and the Bell go. Yeah,
but Bell already did her job. Already did her job.
So now the skull ship is still hitting. You know, that was only 5k shield. It's 24 into 17. So there's the extra shield he needs. End of battle, retire and draw. So this attack is the last attack because he opted not to use any Negrobones last turn either. So just a nice PG here for the Eradicator player, and that it also means that Eradicator now gets to save his Heal Guardian for a much bigger swing next turn.
Yeah, when we go into the bad bounty there. Gonna go ahead and use the Grenache Share with the Hollow skill to just refund all of our resources once again. And with that, we're gonna pass it back into the Eradicator players, and it's probably just gonna be another Stunburst turn here.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Grand Blue player chose to go for the Grenache there, because he had 5 damage open. He didn't need the counter charge, and you have to expect that you're playing into some sort of interruption already. You know, there's an Unruly on the board, there's a Kern check on the board, you know he drove check a heal. I would have just gone for a very gentle turn there. Although it's interesting that whether or not he's playing the tech card, I think I don't remember the name, but there's a grade 1 from Stoicheia that gives the unit in front of this can't be chosen. So that would have been useful for protecting the board there. It's an interesting strike for Eradicator play. He's going to choose to win the game. So VMAX can deal damage in opponents on 5, and all it requires is the opponent to not have a board, which is currently the case. But he's not GB3, so he will be GB3 if he strode it, but yeah, he's choosing to take that back, I think.
Wouldn't the major issue be that the opponent is not on Thunderstrike 5?
Yes, because he realized that he puts the bind back with the grade 1, which is now problematic.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to go to the second Stunburst there, as we were saying.
Generally the normal play when dealt with this kind of situation, just to refill your bind again. We do see the second Esperagi come on, which is a huge.
I don't know if he has enough soul to use both Esperadias though.
And just like you said, that last turn where we forgot to actually get the draw off of the Demo Dragon, Demo Dragon also has that second mode where it's able to go into Soul afterwards to get that bind from Drop Zone. That could have been that extra Soul required to have the Esperagia restand again. Not only that, that could also be an extra card drawn to find those crits that go into Soul on the Vanguard attack as well. There's just a lot of implications of just missing small timings that have large effects on the game state.
Yep, so seeing 2 Skull Dragons and 2 triggers being found here. Some interesting choices there. And now Vowing is going to say, do you want to bind the rest of your Skull Dragons?
Now, most Grand Blue decks, they play around 2 to 3 Skull Dragons, and now we've seen both the Skull Dragons out.
He has
we do see the third pop there.
Yep. There's going to be plus 15 distributed across the board, so 5 to the non-Axel Esperadia, and 10, I guess, to the Axel one? Nope, just all on the non-Axel one.
10 and 5, that way they're both the same power.
Right, yeah.
So
yeah, because he has two 5s and a 10.
Yeah, 23 and 23.
And then binding from hand is the Reshape. Interesting that he didn't use that the previous turn.
Yeah, to actually pick up the Heal Guardian, that would be much appreciated in this upcoming turn. Now that we have the Skeleton Cannoneers in the drop zone to be able to interrupt at least one of the Esperagias, right?
Yeah, so we saw that the Grand Blue player only used 1 Ghost Ship, so there wasn't that much plussing going on. Usually Grand Blue is drawing 4 cards a turn on top of their drive checks. So I think it's actually going to be quite scary here, because these Esperadias are quite fairly large, and he's used up 1 heal guard already, G Guardian already, and he's lost his other heal. So if he doesn't have another 3rd heal in hand, I think he's really going to struggle to guard these Esperadias.
We're going to start with the Spark Rain here. Guarding with a 5 to guard there. Then it's probably going to be Esperadia, or at least 1 Esperadia, and then a Vanguard swing.
Yeah, I think you go with the Axel Esperadia here first, because it's slightly bigger, and you want the slightly bigger one to restand, because the one that's not on the Axel, it's still hitting through a defensive anyway. The first PG comes down, okay.
Oh, that hand is bleeding. Definitely not looking like we are going to be able to guard everything here, especially knowing that there's going to be at least 2 more attacks after this Vanguard
shield. I think they've got 1 card in hand left to fight against this.
1 card in hand, 1
swing.
card in soul.
But like I said, does Vowing have enough soul to use both Esperadias? That is going to be a 1 to pass, it looks like. I think it hits. Nope. Oh, it was a no 2 pass.
2 to pass.
So there's the 1 soul.
On attack declaration, obviously supposed to have it.
Yeah.
Alright, 6 damage, no heal, and that is game.
Alright, that's the end of round 3. I guess not really much to say there. I think it was a case of Grand Blue was maybe a little bit too paranoid of what Narukami can do. Like, I think they definitely could have set up their turn a bit more effectively to have more pieces to guard with, to fight back against the Esperadias, and also being able to say, you know, I'm going to go for this Bell, reset your bind zone, but I'm also going to play around your defensive plays. Like, you know, I'm not going to let you just randomly wipe my board with a G-Guard, or I'm going to make it so that even if you unruly me, I can still combo off and, like, you know, make plays. And I think that's maybe not going for the bad bounty there was a problem. Like, if you know that you have, like, sure, you need Obadiah to set up the Bell, but at the same time, you could have just gone into bad bounty anyway, discarded the Nairos that we saw you drive check the turn before, and just try to set up more offenses than they have defensive interaction for, right?
I think the Bell was very much needed there because let's say that we go into the bad bounty instead, we don't have the Bell. That's a lot of cards in bind, in which case that Stunverse is doing a lot of damage to your hand and you won't be able to guard on the next turn after. But I think what you said was correct. I think the paranoia was there. We were afraid at what Narukami could do on the defensive, but then how afraid we were, we played into it regardless, knowing that we had options. We had the Skeleton Cannoneer that we actually milled off of the Obadiah that we could have called, Declare Hollow, pop the Unruly, so that line of play is turned off. And then from there, there's just one less bit of interaction to deal with for that turn. You might have actually dealt more damage that turn, attacked their hand a bit more, had some more offensive pressure, because that Bell would not have been sniped then, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think, yeah, just the paranoia, being too scared to actually play to win rather than to play to not lose. Probably one of like the bigger things that we saw there on that big Obadiah turn.
Yeah, and you know, again, mentioning back to the Stunverse selections, like the cards that were being bound and the way the Grand Prix player responded to Stunverse was very, very interesting. Because the thing about Stunverse is that your opponent chooses what to bind. So the Grand Blue player was actively saying, sure, I'll bind my Skull Dragons instead of like these other random cards in his drop zone, because maybe he was thinking I can just get them back with Bell next turn. But then that's opening yourself up to say, if that line of play then forces you to go into the Bell instead of just saying, okay, sure, you're going to put 5 cards in my bind zone, next turn it'll be 10, I lose 2 cards, but I'm still drawing 3 cards from like, you know, multiple ghost ships or like multiple the crits that go into soul or whatever. Like, you know, you're saying that like you're aggressively playing to the out, and because of that, you're not winning the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, so that's going to be the end of round 3. Once again, sorry to both players. I don't have the names of the players here. If you were featured in this video, please let us know. But yeah, that's been round 3 of VGCS. Zystral and Toku, again, with yellow card. Well, as always, like and subscribe. We're going to have round 4 for you up very soon. Bye-bye.